Yo, what's shaking, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Monday Overreaction Show here on the Orange Bloods Texas Football Channel. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That's Anwar Richardson. And before we get too deep on some overreactions that include a little bit of Arch Manning, and not because we're just trying to say Arch's name and put it above a video so you guys will click, but because I think there's an interesting Arch overreaction to have following his visit over Alabama. But before we do all of that, we do want to mention this show sponsored by RogueShop.com. Our friend Richard and the gang over at RogueShop.com, the sponsor of this video. Anwar, you've got your gummies. And let me say, one of my favorite things, I'm a big fan of the suckers.
Really?
You like these?
No, I haven't tried those.
I like these because I'm not saying I'm a Kojak guy where I'm walking around with a lollipop as the bald guy with a lollipop in his mouth all the time. But if you want to get down and you just want to do it really on the sly, then just having either one of the little Jolly Rancher looking candies or the suckers is a nice way to go in slowly. I got like a whole bag of the suckers.
Oh, nice.
Nice. Yeah, and then I've got my own gummies here. Then, if you really want to get down the moon rocks, which are available on the website as well. Story about the moon rock real quick. The YouTube audience will approve. A friend of mine swallowed one of these thinking that it was a gummy. They slept real well that night. I was told.
I'm for a summer night. Have you checked on them?
Like, what's up with these moon rock? Or what's up with these?
How do you even think that tasted good?
It didn't. That's why they came to tell me, like, yo, this was the worst gummy I've ever had. And they had like black stuff on their teeth. And I was like, yo.
Wow.
I went to go check. I was like, what did you just do? And he was like, yeah, I just had one of these. And I was like, that is like a resin ball. And yeah, they slept real well that night. Just so you know, if you ever were wondering what that would be like, you go into a deep fog of a sleep and don't wake up for like 14 hours like your Sleeping Beauty. All right, let's jump into, I think Richard will appreciate his Rogue sponsorship spot today. That's real life testimony.
I don't know how anyone saw this and they're like, man, I need to eat this. Like, you don't have the smartest friends. Go ahead, Ketch.
Well, I didn't. Smart friends? What are those?
That's true.
What are smart friends? So I told you earlier this morning before we did the deal, like I had a bit of an Arch Manning take coming out of the weekend. And it's probably good for the Monday Overreaction show because I can be very delicate with kind of how I phrase it and stuff like that. But one of the things that I noticed about Arch's visit coming out of Alabama this weekend, it's just all quiet in a way that, I was on every Alabama website that exists in the name of, is there something being said? Is there something being, coming? The visit was great, and this is what he liked, and this is what the family did. And it just didn't exist. Whereas coming out of the Austin visit a week ago, there was a sense to me that Texas reporters, including us specifically, I mean, it's the reason why more than anything I had this thought, is that we're sourced on the Manning stuff better than the Alabama people are sourced on the Manning stuff. And it makes me think that the Manning camp as a whole have a different vibe going on with Texas than they do Alabama, as evidenced by the fact that there's not 15 Arch Manning, what he did on his Alabama trip kind of stories out. I mean, even nationally, The Athletic last week immediately talked to his high school coach who made himself available to say, this is what happened on the Texas visit. And this is, Matter of fact, in one of those visits, little curtain behind the scenes, I even, in talking to Anwar about that piece that was in The Athletic last Monday, I was like, this guy actually parroted almost word for word some stuff that we had heard from our own sourcing with regards to Eli in terms of Arch wanting to take his time and make a potentially going into the fall. And like the wording was almost identical in a way where I was like, okay, like, you know, there's some good stuff going on here with regards to the access that people were getting on the Texas side. It's much more low key on the Bama side, but it's not because people from Bama wouldn't have an interest in having information on what happened on the visit. It just makes me think that over the course of the last 12 months, people with, I don't know, manning access of information is more readily available on the burnt orange side of the fence, more so than any other side of the fence for any other school. And I think that speaks to Texas being the favorite. And I guess I would give an example like this. If Texas and Ohio State were in it for a kid, and I noticed that, you know, this kid, there was just always a lot of information in Texas places on the kid, and there never was on the Ohio State side of things. If suddenly that changed, it would make me think, okay, you know, people are talking purposefully now to Ohio State and letting them in to the inside of what's happening in a way that wasn't happening before. To me, as someone behind the scenes, I would look at that as a bit of a sign. I'll look at Arch the same way. If in a month from now, suddenly all of the Alabama places of reporting have Arch ends and are like, yo, on his visit, he had a lamb chop. You know what I mean? If we get to that, it'll let me know that things have changed. But right now, my Monday overreaction is there's just a different vibe between Texas and Arch than Arch and the other schools, I think, as evidenced by the aftermath of all these visits.
It's an interesting, you know, when you start to try to connect dots and start trying to like read the tea leaves. You know, it's very curious. You know, and by the way, I think you and I would both agree, we obviously have high regard for the Bama Rivals website that we have.
Absolutely.
Bama Insider. I mean, they do a fantastic job.
It's one of the best websites in the Rivals network, bar
yes,
none.
you know, their YouTube channel is fantastic, phenomenal. I mean, you know, so we think very highly of them and their sourcing and everything to that effect. So there's definitely no knock on Kyle or anybody else on there. The quietness is interesting because, you know, we started getting information about Arch and his visit, you know, a lot beforehand. And then really the day that they were leaving, you know, I don't know if they had the thing, I don't know if they had gotten on the plane yet before we started hearing about like how well they went. And of course he was seen around town, you know, he was seen with Sam Ellinger, you know, at Dell, you know, was at the practice. So, you know, there was a lot of, you know, activity. You're like, Arch is here, Arch is here, Arch is here. And, you know, you don't hear that from the Bama side. And people say, oh, okay, you guys are overreacting. I think this thing, to what Ketch is saying, from a reporting standpoint, when you start hearing smoke from one particular side, like let's say like a Texas side, when as relates to a recruit, you know, there's usually a lot of interest. When you don't hear any smoke and you don't see things going on, it's usually indicative that there might not be something. You can say maybe the kid doesn't talk, you know, but coaches talk, you know, recruiting people talk. I mean, like it gets out. Kids on visits talk. I mean, there's more than one way to skin a cat. It doesn't have to all be from Arch. It's the people who saw him or around him and this and that. And so when you don't get that vibe, it's kind of like for us, it's easy to say, huh, that's interesting because we know what's going on over here. And we don't see it at other. Now, I do believe, Ketch, if I'm correct, I feel like there was a little bit coming out of the Georgia visit that he had.
More so than Alabama, for sure.
Way more than Alabama, right? I you know, definitely more than Alabama. But I feel like we heard something leading up to the Georgia visit and after the Georgia visit. I remember reading on the Georgia website, like it went very well. Yeah. So, you start, like, okay, Georgia's in the mix, right? You see, Texas went well. Texas in the mix. Bama, crickets. You're like, take a mental note.
Anytime we can get a hold of the kid, this is kind of a general rule of a thumb. Like when Sukumel's able to get a hold of a kid, that's usually a good sign that Texas is well placed. Because if Texas is fourth, I'm not going to talk to that guy.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, it's the same thing in the transfer portal. There have been guys that you've been able to get in contact with that when they hear you cover University of Texas, it's Orange Bloods, they're like, okay, what's up? And they'll give us an update. Mm-hmm. There are kids that we try to reach on the transfer portal that have not chosen Texas. And in the end, we're like, oh, so that's why I didn't call back.
Correct.
So, I think that it's probably an idea and a concept that the viewers won't have given much thought of a lot because they would never have approached it from this side. But in general, these are little things that we look for. If Sukumel suddenly can't get a hold of a kid that he usually can get a hold of, it's usually a bit of a sign. It's like, oh, well, that kid did an interview with X, Y, and Z, but he didn't talk to us. And like, maybe that is a sign that he's going to go to and more times than not, the signs end up being legitimate signs. This isn't me saying that Arch is definitely going to Texas. I'm just saying, from my standpoint, it's significantly noticeable that the access to immediate information was easier to come by from Texas reporting than it was from Alabama reporting. And it's not because those people don't do good work. There just are no accidents in life. And if we start seeing Alabama suddenly with an influx of information the next month or so, it will be coming from places. Clearly, they're not faking it. There were no fake Arch reports from the Alabama side overnight because there weren't any Arch reports overnight. So it'll just be interesting to see if that changes at all, because while you mentioned the Georgia visit, there is some thought that Texas and Alabama are the two most important teams in that recruitment, with Georgia right there, maybe in a number 3 spot. So I don't know, like in a world where, like you said, we're looking for signs, I think this was one that is worth noting officially in this video format. It would be something to keep an eye on moving forward. Does any of that ever change? Or going all the way to his decision, does it feel like Texas reporting is more dialed into the ebb and flow of what's taken place? It does feel that way at the moment. And maybe that's because we're overly obsessing. Maybe. But my spidey senses tell me that this is a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think for people watching this video, it's viewing it out of the prism of our industry more so than viewing it as a fan. Like this is just like industry stuff. Like this is like tech, talking about tech or something to that effect. We're just giving you like the industry. This is how it works in our industry, and these are usually good signs, for Texas, and the recruitment.
I mean, they're not talking to our sourcing.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
So, I think, if you're a Texas fan, and if you're watching this, you probably are a Texas fan. I mean, few people watch it because they aren't Texas fans, and that's fine too. We appreciate
some Alabama fans today.
There'll be some Alabama fans. We got some Sooner fans who watch us, to make fun of us, which I appreciate, because
the Sooner fans love us.
I won't go love.
They love the video. They don't love what we say all the time.
Correct.
But we entertain them.
Yes. Now, here's the thing. Sooner fans will tell. Here's the thing. I get on all websites, right? I get on Sooner Scoop. They do a great job over there. And so, I look at the insult. Probably once a month or so, I go through there and I'll see the jokes, and it's kind of funny to me. The only thing they'll say usually is they wish they got more of that kind of content on their side. Is usually what I hear them say more so than anything else. And then, of course, proceed to say I'm an idiot and you're an idiot and you blah, blah, blah.
But we entertain them so much that they wish they had us.
Yeah. Oh, Absolutely. Absolutely. If we were doing this for OU, we would be like gods over there, well, maybe someone else, not you and I, but something to that effect. But to the point though, one day, I promise, one day, and I don't know when, maybe when I'm older, I'm going to give you my, it, but one day I'll reveal my Baker Mayfield run-in story. And
is that not on public domain?
I've never made, because it is what it is, but it shows our reach is all I'm going to say. I'll leave it like that, but
Baker watches.
I can tell you Baker knows who I am. I can tell you that much. And
it is funny to find out who watches the videos from time to time.
It is. It really, it's fascinating to know that someone knows you and then hates you. And it's probably a really good reason why Baker's not in Cleveland anymore, because if my run-in with him is any indication of using nice words at this moment, I understand why he's not in Cleveland. But, I think when you look at Texas, Ketch, we just can't ignore, and some of the things we talked about before, that it's clear the Manning families think very highly of Sarkisian. It's clear that they think this could be a place that they can call home. Like, it's clear that, Texas is not only in the mix, we believe that Texas is the leader. We believe that Texas is kind of probably the team to beat going forward. And now it's just really what we're having to see and hone in on. One, if he comes back, and if he comes back, and we've said this in previous videos, Ketch's golden rule is if you get a kid on campus about 5 times, that's that really great sign. They've done it 3. If you get another summer visit and then another official in the fall, you're cooking with grease.
I would probably say for an out-of-state kid, you have to account for that. So 3 visits. Sounds like the magic number for it. But to be fair, Alabama will have had 3 visits. You know what I mean? Yeah. The Manning family will have taken their time and vetted their options in such a way that I bet all of the main candidates get 3, but the eventual winner is going to get 5 or more when it's all said and done.
Yeah. Well, to your point, like this, your reference point is usually like in-state. But it also with the Mannings, they have the resources clearly to make these kind of visits, so you don't have, they can come as often as they want. Now, things will dictate that as far as the summer, their spring football and things, of course he waited till like after basketball season to do certain things. So what will be interesting for us, Ketch, and one of the things we were unsure of at this moment is really where that timeline for a decision is going to be. Like I've heard, it's supposed to, they want to wait until the fall. And I think, Ketch, was it the Athletic or was it Rivals who had, I think they maybe had spoke to his coach?
That was Rivals. Well, it was both. The Rivals had it first.
Yeah, well, we had the fall first. We
had that first, but then Rivals reported that on the Monday afterwards, I think maybe Nick Harris, newly of Rivals, I think he had it. And then later in the week, the Athletic also, and he got it from the head coach at Manning School, as did the Athletic. And he seems to be emerging as like the go-to source for information for a lot of people with regards to, I don't know. I would just say this. In talking to our Alabama people, I sense that they've had a harder time getting info on Manning. Whereas I think you and I feel we're pretty good. Like we're not walking around saying we don't know what we feel pretty confident with what we're reporting, because we feel really good about who we're getting our information from. And I don't know that exists everywhere. And I wouldn't have known that until this weekend when I was looking for it. And I was like, okay, well, let's see who gets what coming from the Alabama side of things. And it just didn't quite feel like it existed. And, this is probably the kind of thing that normally I would just keep between you and I on Slack and say, hey, didn't you notice that this was kind of weird? But we're doing a Monday Overreaction show, and this is perfect. It's perfect. Anybody else, we wouldn't do the video. Arch Manning, let's do a video.
I mean, he's Arch. I mean, he's a he's a 5-star, everything like that. And again, you can't you can't negate. One thing I always I've been saying is at some point, it's like when you go to a club. I've said this. I think I've said this before. When you go to a club and you look in VIP, usually a bunch of attractive women there. Usually attractive women like to hang around attractive women. It's very few times that you see a group of 8 attractive women and like 2 or 5 of them are unattractive. Like attractive women hang around attractive women. And you can't negate that having a 5-star like Quinn Ewers on campus helps Texas. It's not to say Bama doesn't have a great quarterback. Like, come on, now I'm not being ridiculous, but OU got it cooking. When Lincoln Riley got it cooking, that became the place that if you were the 5-star, that's where you go. Like that, you want to go there and get developed. That you can't negate that. Sarkisian's reputation for a quarterback developer, resonates with that family. Having Quinn definitely resonates, with that family. Possibility of working with Sark, So I don't want to overcook it, but I can't, I gotta always mention that having a guy like Quinn on campus, and again, someone will say, well, Bama's got a fantastic quarterback as well.
And that's probably why they're where they are in this recruitment. Like,
yes.
Again, there are no accidents.
Correct. So, like I said, the last thing I would say is the only thing we don't know is the time frame. I'm going to jump back to that before we get to the subject. The one thing we got to figure out is the time frame, and if it ends up being in the fall. Like, to me, if you're a Texas fan and you hear they're waiting to the fall, then hooray! Like they're waiting to see what your team does and your team alone. They don't need to know anything else. Ketch, about Georgia. They won a national title. What the hell can Bama tell them that they don't know, that the world doesn't know, that anyone who follows college football for 1 minute knows everything you need to know about Alabama? What do you need to know about LSU? That's their home state. Damn, they ain't going to tell them nothing brand new about Ole Miss. That's like me, Ketch, that's like me asking you what's going on in your house.
Yeah.
Come on, man. Like that's their they know everything they need to know as relates to Ole Miss. Everything they need to know. If they say they want to wait, the only thing they're waiting on is Texas.
All right, so here's I got one more overreaction for a Monday. It's based on, I had this thought this weekend. It's based on exactly what you're talking about. I think he makes an earlier decision. So I think you say that you're going to make a decision in the fall, and it gives you a big piece of runway to land the airplane, right? Because then there are no set of expectations that it's going to come earlier. You can always commit earlier, but you won't have the pressure that people are waiting on you to do so if they think it might be later. If it's Texas, he's now visited Texas 3 times. If they come out of April and they're saying, we need to wait and pick Texas or see what Texas does, isn't that really a sign that you shouldn't go to Texas? I mean, deep down, if you're like, I got to go out on a couple of more dates just to make, like, you either know or you don't know at some point. I mean, it should work. And consequently, if it's Alabama, they shouldn't need to, they should know. So I'm starting to think, because if you have to, because of what you just said, Texas is the only place they have to wait on. If it ends up getting framed in a way where we're going to wait and see what Texas does, that never works out for Texas. That is alarm bells going off. That's Tommy Brockermeyer type of stuff. And in the end, what we know is that, and part of that is Texas hasn't played well. Anytime kids are like, I need to see what Texas does, a coach gets fired. Right? Like, it brought Herman down. Charlie ended up getting a piece of that as well. So I think that I'm starting to think it's going to be before the fall. Because if you really need until the fall to get the assurances that you need then that feels problematic. And it feels like the thing that's problematic enough that eventually the family would go, we don't have reservations about anybody else. We just have reservations about one. It's the one we like the most, but nobody else. Eventually you have enough time and like over a family vacation, you start thinking things in the dark and the quiet. That's the type of stuff that you eventually think about. So I think if it's Texas, he's going to come out of the spring with some Texas momentum and he's not going to wait. I think if he does wait, eventually that becomes potentially a problem because of the framing that this will eventually take. And I think even the schools that are recruiting Arch would, at some point, Alabama will go, the fact that you're having to wait, you ain't got to wait for us. You know what you're getting. You know there will be no disappointment. You know there will be rings. We're going to play for championships. And they don't know that about Texas. And I think for Texas, I don't know, I'm starting to think the sooner he commits, the better. That if it goes longer, that's risky for one team and one team only.
I mean, so I will a little bit disagree on that one, Ketch. It won't be one of our blowouts that we'll do for the next
yes
6 months that we've done or something like that. But I'll take a different, point of view on it. I think that there's a couple of things at play because first of all, I acknowledge what you're saying, and I think there is some validity to that, right? So let me acknowledge that. I also think that if you're the Manning family and you look at Texas, let's just be honest, there's been some volatile things that have happened. You've had coaching turnover. This is the third coach. This is the third coach since I've been here. Okay. So, and then, and you have a fan base that sometimes gets a little impatient because we can understand Charlie, getting fired. Totally get that. That happened. Can't ignore 2 5-7 seasons. They also fired a coach that had 4 straight winning seasons. It's interesting to talk about patience and developing and how patience is needed. It's like, well, you had wins and guaranteed bowl games and 4 straight bowl wins, and that wasn't enough. So I think some of this is a byproduct of some of the instability that they've seen that has occurred, at Texas. If there's things not going well in year 2, I mean, we know the machine, and I think the Mannings know the machine. And they know Texas. They know what happens, and they know what guys. Ketch, you and I've done this long enough. I don't give a damn if he finishes 6-6. People are going to start talking about who's the next guy. They will go into say, man, year 3. I mean, if he doesn't do it, it's a wrap. Why do you say that, Auburn? Because it's happened every couple of years. So I think if you're a Manning family, you're saying like, we just want to see some stability at this program. Are they going to be patient with the process? Are they going to let it develop? And then also some of the things that, Sark has told them about, okay, this is the process. This is what I'm working on. This is the foundation I'm trying to lay. I'm going to, I need these players to go. I'm going to bring in my own players. I got to bring in better offensive linemen, defensive linemen, so on and so forth. At that point, let's see it. Let's see it. Seeing is believing. And look, if you judge it off the recruiting class, that's something for them to say, okay, look at all the offensive linemen that he brought in. Look at the defensive linemen that he brought in. That's also important, as well, because, we can talk about the O-line all day. That D-line's got to be better as well. So I think, so the only thing that will go a little bit is believing that someone can do something, but also wanting to see it, right? It's seeing someone who's been in multiple relationships, multiple marriages, and you start dating that person, you're like, all right, you got a really shaky past. Really, you seem great. You seem awesome, but you've been divorced like 5 times. So we're going to take this slow. Let's let this thing flow. You said you've learned. You said you've gone to counseling. You've said you've gotten better. Sounds great. Let's just let this thing play out just a little bit. No, we're not going to rush. We're not going to jump into it. But I like you. I'm dating you. I like you. Just want to make sure you're not as cray-cray as some of the other people may say. You're not as cray-cray as your past. We want to.
I have a question for you.